Welcome to the Enabling Buying Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Kirch, and I'm grateful you're here. Enabling Buying is brought to you by Collavia.com, your all-in-one sales enablement platform. Now, we launched this show because we see that selling has become harder than ever. Automation is creating opportunities, but it's also creating more noise and disconnection. We're training buyers to ignore our outreach. We're muddying the sales process with impersonal efforts focused upon the things that are easy to talk about, but they often aren't the reasons that people buy. We must sell to emotion, but logic, features, benefits, these are the talking points we're leaning into, which often makes the buyers lean away. Enabling buying is about something different. It's about understanding how people actually make decisions. It's about earning trust, creating meaningful human connections, and helping buyers move forward with confidence. So where does creativity and storytelling fit into the modern sales process? Well, our guest today is going to show us that both of these areas are strengths to lean into. Greg Friel is the founder of GF Consulting, a marketing and creative consultancy specializing in brand storytelling and event design. For the past 33 years, he's been running freelance music and media, doing everything from record and video production to podcast and audiobook recording. Greg always believes in creating inspiring and innovative work and tries to stay away from the obvious. He believes that your brand experience should be unique, not dull. He's a marketing consultant, musician, and public speaker with signature programs such as The Power of Storytelling and The Human Edge in the Age of AI. Now, Greg's also a composer and award-winning record producer through brands such as Interscope, Universal, Sony Music, and EMI, with music projects in Hollywood, working with people like Ellen DeGeneres. He's worked in Nashville, Germany, and the Far East. Now, Greg's studio, Freelance Media, is now a full AI and real-world content studio creating video marketing content for businesses, as well as delivering workshops and seminars on AI and storytelling. Greg is also currently producing a family-friendly AI video show for TikTok called Madison Bounce. It's a lot of fun, and it really showcases his entrepreneurial spirit, but also his creativity. I'm super excited to welcome our guest today. Join me in welcoming Greg Friel to the Enabling Buying Podcast. Greg Friel, welcome to the Enabling Buying Podcast. Good to see you, my friend.
Thank you so much, Paul. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. Hey, listen, you are somebody who's done some amazing projects. I've seen some of the work you've done, and I'm always impressed. You've worked in media, music, video production, branding, and now you're in this AI consulting space, and you're doing some really creative things. So what have all these experiences done to bring together, but what have they, I guess, taught you about how people actually make buying decisions?
I would say the thing more than anything else is that people always buy emotionally. You can have all kinds of reasons for buying something or getting into something, but people like what they like, and every single thing that's happening in their life is going to be influencing their buying decisions, and it's not just about features or the products and services that you're selling, but all of the things that I do. I'm always trying to tap into real human emotions. I'm trying to make people feel something, whether that's get people up to dance with music or whatever, or whether it's just to make them have their heart broken, or you're trying to manipulate people in the nicest possible way. But it's all about dialing into the actual human emotion side of things. And something I always like to say is that I'm not in the convincing business. From a sales point of view, I'm never trying to sell you something. I'm going to present things that this is what it is I'm doing, whatever project that happens to be, and either you can get on board with that or you can't. And it's you want the people to come to you. That's kind of that's always been my approach. I'm very much a content marketer, and it's really create these things, these assets that people are kind of going to go, oh, that gives me an idea of who this guy is and what he's about and what this project is. And, either they're going to love it and they're going to be interested in it, or it's not going to be for them. And I'm okay with that. And I think that's a huge thing. If you translate that to businesses, too much of that tends to be, we're trying to win people over. I'm not trying to win people over. Either they're going to get it or they're not. And there has to be a certain amount of faith in what it is that you're doing and belief in what it is you're doing in the first place.
Yeah, the emotional buying behavior is something that a lot of salespeople don't understand. They don't ignore. They're taught that they have to persuade, we have to convince, sell those features and benefits. But when we get away from that and we really focus on trying to help the buyer, help them solve their problems, our solutions can meet their needs. It changes the game. So how does that change the buyer's experience, and what can we do to influence that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to looking at everything from the buyer's perspective. So, for example, I mean, I work with some tech companies, and and I was working with an AI company last year, and so much of these guys, particularly in the tech world, are they're so enamored with the tech that they've come up with, and whatever it is that they've created, they don't necessarily go through that process of, was this something that people actually wanted in the first place, or it's something that's needed, or is it just technology for technology's sake? And then reverse engineering how the customer journey is and everything to do with that side of things. How are they going to acquire this product or service? And is that going to be something that's going to, is that process itself going to alienate them? And all these things are, it's all part of the brand experience. For me, it's every single touch point along the way. These are the little things that are the big things. How you do one thing is how you do everything. So if people are finding something frustrating here, they're like, I can't be bothered with this, I'm going to go somewhere else. Yeah, so it's always thinking of it from, okay, what would the customer think of this? And is that
Yeah.
what they want?
Yeah, last time we spoke, you and I had some interesting conversations about automation. Now, with the world we live in now with AI, a lot of companies are out there trying to automate processes, front end processes. They're trying to generate leads through automation. But I think there's such a focus sometimes on automation that we forget the human side of things. CRMs, slide decks, inboxes. Sales teams don't need more scattered tools. They need alignment. Collavia brings your sales playbook, AI coaching, training, and goals together in one platform for consultative B2B teams looking to close more deals with less confusion and greater consistency. Collavia, enabling buying in a world of selling. Visit Collavia.com.
Mm-hmm.
So talk a little bit about automating things that shouldn't necessarily be automated without a full understanding of the buyer journey.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. This goes totally back to what I was saying about it comes down to brand. There's going to be certain brands that everything about it is about authenticity. It's about maybe an in-person experience, or it's a real tangible thing. That the thing that they love about the brand is that it feels personal to them, and it might be because of a direct human connection. And I think it's understanding that there's going to be things along the way that people are buying from you because that experience is part of why they're buying. So if you're removing that and going, okay, we're going to have a chat bot that does this, or this is going to be a virtual AI agent that's going to be dealing with this, is that immediately going to tarnish the brand in terms of people perceiving it in a different way? Are they going to be like, well, this isn't why I like these guys in the first place. This feels computerized and, too automated. But I think with larger organizations, whenever there may be more convoluted processes and there's things that it's enormously helpful to automate and just to kind of get there sooner, then great. But if it's maybe a smaller business, I mean, it depends on how that business is perceived in the marketplace. But at the end of the day, it's going to be, do we really want to experience this in this way or this way?
Yeah, and I think you've done a really good job with your clients of trying to understand, what makes them tick, but also what their buyers are looking for. And one thing that you and I talked about was how you believe that there should be an audit process, that customers actually, we understand how they want to buy before we even implement any automation or circumvent the human aspect. Is there a process or a framework you see working for that?
So before I work with any business, I always do a brand discovery session. I mean, and that's just kind of a given. It just has to happen. Otherwise, you would just be, this is what we always do with everything. And I never have a one size fits all for anything. So there's always going to be the brand discovery session first. So I totally have a really good grounding in what the business is and what their processes are and what matters to them, what the values of the business are. So if I didn't know all of that, then you're not able to inform. It's not able to inform what that those systems and processes should be or what shouldn't happen. So
Yeah.
we have that initial brand discovery, and then we do, as part of an audit, you're literally going to go through this and kind of go, right, okay, so what does this look like at the moment, and what are ways that, yes, you want to improve efficiency and effectiveness and all of the usual kind of business metrics, but it's the process needs to really be a part of the whole thing, because that process is really how people view the brand and the brand experience. So we go through that, and then we'll look at that from the point of view of literally very much going back and forth with, okay, does this align with what your brand values are and how people want to experience your brand? And if it seems out of alignment, then
Yeah.
guess what? Don't automate. So I think one of the things I always like to say is, I'm very much in the middle when it comes to AI. I'm not like, you have to automate, you have to do this. It comes down to, maybe it's right for you and maybe it's not. We're all going to use AI for research or that those side of things, but there's going to be businesses where you're like, no, we want to keep this, very much human first, and maybe just automate the rote and the things that can just be sort of happening in the background, but maybe not so much customer facing.
Yeah, and I think that there's another issue out there that's all related to this, and that's the idea that we're often not transparent when we are automating, or we're
Yeah.
pretending that the process is human. You and I talked about this band I saw on YouTube that was being promoted, and it was clearly an AI music
Yeah.
video. And when I looked it up, sure enough, it was an AI band. It isn't a real. These singers are not real. But in the comments, people are commenting things as a female band, and people are commenting things, oh, you women are so beautiful, and there's like hundreds of comments in there on these videos that I'm like, these aren't real people. It's AI. You can tell
Yeah.
it's AI. It's so polished looking,
But I think that's the
but
thing
that
you and I
lack of
can tell.
transparency creates real alienation.
Hmm.
Yeah,
And so I think this is where
but when
the
we
huge,
aren't honest and truthful about that,
yeah, I think the issue is
go ahead.
really all about authenticity. When it is going to be an AI experience, I think that needs to be front and center. Yeah, I was recently watching a video of a lady talking about her customer experience with a particular company, and it took her 3 minutes of chatting back and forth with this voice AI on the phone to actually get it to admit that it was an AI and not a human. But it wasn't, it was like deliberately trying to hide it. And I think that's the thing that everybody kind of worries about going forward when it comes to AI is, where are the guardrails, and we need to have honesty, transparency, and going forward, the businesses that I think will thrive will be the ones who are very transparent in that and authentically themselves, and who you're dealing with, and you really, you want to know, like, and trust who you're dealing with.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean these processes are bad. But if you create an experience instead of just trying to mislead, sometimes that's. I remember years ago there was. I worked for the Gallup organization. I was doing telephone interviews, and we used to call this phone number because they always had automated messages on there that were very funny. Some guy
Mm,
had created like like his own little. You'd call in, and every day there was some sort of funny quote. And this was pre AI, obviously, but
sure.
it was an experience. So every time you call in, you never knew where it was going to take you, and it was like a multiple sequence message on there, and it was fun. And it's like, so if we're creating an experience and creating a journey for a client, I don't think AI is a negative if it's done right. And you're right,
No,
and we
no,
disclose that, hey, this is a journey.
and I think as long as people are aware of that, it's whenever it's intentionally misleading that people start to get really cynical, and then they feel like they're being manipulated. So if they're feeling that they're being manipulated in that process straight away, then they're going to be like, hold on, do I really want to trust what's going on here? So I think like you were saying,
Yeah.
that having that honesty, that transparency up front about it is key.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. You've built a career around storytelling. You're an incredible branding person, and great storyteller. You've created some feature films that are like amazing, and so you're very focused on storytelling. A lot of salespeople out there, I think, are so focused on pushing their product. They're being told about, hey, here, these are the features and benefits that we're selling. Everyone gets very close to a product when they're created internally and they fall in love with the talking points internally. But that isn't necessarily what people are buying. Can you talk a little bit about how people should become better at storytelling because that can influence the whole buying process?
Sure. Whenever I'm sitting down with a client for the first time and I'm trying to understand what their business is, the first question is always going to be who's this for? You know that the customer avatar or avatars, if there's it's a multi kind of level thing, but um, it's really understanding who the product is for and what they're going to get from it, and then reverse engineering their story in terms of how they're then going to be interested in buying this. So in my head, I'm always, and I'm very, very guilty of automatically coming up with some story or here's a video idea in that first conversation because my brain automatically kind of goes to finding the story. But so say for example, I was sitting with an insurance company or some kind of traditional business like that. That's not the most exciting thing in the world, and in terms of what kind of business is. It's a very gray kind of business. So from that, I'm looking at that going, okay, what are we selling here? Okay, what we're actually selling here is peace of mind. So there's going to be stories that you're going to think of that are really about what's the problem that you're solving. Well, there might be a family, and the guy's concerned about what's going to happen if he, if the house burns down or some tragedy befalls them. Well, this is going to be the thing that's going to sort that for them. So, how can we put the customer directly in the brand so that they actually see themselves in the stories that we're actually telling? So brand works from that perspective. Literally, we see ourselves in the products and services that we want to buy or be part of it. Or if it's an experience, then it's kind of like, oh, that I really want to be part of that experience. So it's really kind of reverse engineering that process. So it's who are these people? Okay, right, fine. This is how they're going to see this, and this is how we want them to see it.
Yeah. I think it's such a strength being a good storyteller. I had an uncle that he was just an amazing storyteller, and people were glued to everything he said. Now he was an engaging guy anyway, but man, if he started telling a story, nobody was tuning out. And I always thought, man, if I could master one thing in life, it'd be becoming a better storyteller. And
Well,
I think if you're good at telling a story, you create engagement, you create trust, because I mean that the Cro-Magnon brain It still responds to stories and questions. Those are the two things that are very primal in nature. So, what is it about
Yeah.
stories that you think buyers remember you?
I think it's, as I was saying before, I think it's whenever they can see themselves or their lives or the problems that they face within those stories that you're telling. It's finding things that are universal emotions as well. It's whenever you go into extreme detail in things, ironically, that's when things become universal, because it's the things that everybody experiences on a day-to-day basis that will resonate. Um, so it's those little tiny things that are, people are really really going to remember. Yeah, I think it's finding, tapping into things that really resonate with people on a personal level, and context is everything. So um, you're not just thinking of the product and service and these people. There's going to be, where are they in their lives, location, what else is happening in the world, and absolutely everything is going to affect people's decisions. And this is something that I was talking about with an AI company recently. With they're very much, the data says this, and I'm like, data isn't everything, which they freak at. But for me, I'm like, yeah, but you don't know that Colin just had this phone call about his dad being in hospital just before he came into the room. And now that's affecting what he's thinking about just now. The data isn't going to have that. So all of these personal things impact how people are going to react to the content that you bring out. But every conversation that's in a room, and you can't discount um, how impulsive people are and how emotional they are, and they don't make logical decisions. As much as we would love to say, if I do this, they're definitely going to buy this. They might, but it's not an exact art.
Yeah.
It's you're trying to recognize patterns, and hopefully, you know, you're going to get them somewhere along the way.
Buyers, we said the buying decision is emotional, but buyers want security. They want to feel safe in a decision. Now, it may not be a surface level conscious thing, but at the end of the day, they don't buy if they don't feel safe in the purchase process. How does storytelling help in that? I mean, because I think that's an area where you do a lot of work, is making sure that the journey, the story, it's creating this sense of security behind that.
So I think you get the safety and security by the familiar. So things that they would recognize in terms of um, maybe certain visual locations, or just circumstances that they would recognize as their own. And it's that resonance with the truth of what the story is that really helps to resonate with them, and they feel the confidence in that, because it feels real to them. The more it feels real to them, the more they're going to relax and kind of go, yeah, this feels true to me. Because they're all looking at, everybody's looking at everything through their own lens and their own experience. So what one person will resonate with is not going to be the same as somebody else. That's why I always think it's hilarious whenever you get these, you know, if you do these 5 things, you're definitely going to be a millionaire, that kind of thing. Um, it's circumstance and everything else is completely different for absolutely everybody. So it's really got to be thinking of it in terms of, okay, yeah, but what's right for them. Um, and I always think as well, but when people work with me, they because of the way I kind of carry myself and other projects that I've worked on, they might think that I'm going to um, put my own identity on what it is that we're creating. That's not my job. My job in the branding marketing world is to interpret what their brand is and to create something that really reflects that in an honest and a true way, and that's really going to then resonate and connect with an audience if it really aligns with those values. And that's down to really understanding their brand and their story, and not just, hey, I'm going to do what I always do. It's a different thing.
That's got to be hard for you though, because I know how creative you are. I'm sure it's hard to separate that at times because I'm
Oh
sure
yeah.
you're like, hey, wait, we should do it this way. But I know you're really good at that.
I mean, I have, yeah, I'm always going to come up with
Greg, I
loads
look
of
at the way
ideas.
things are today. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'm always going
Yeah.
to come up with
Oh
loads
yeah,
of
that's
ideas,
just
and
you. I
then,
mean, every time I
you know,
talk to you, it's like there's something
and it's
comes
just,
up.
how do you switch it off? And you don't
I
want to
look at
switch
the
it
way
off.
the world is today. Yeah, absolutely. I look at the way the world is today, and I look at there's so many opportunities to streamline processes, and we talked about automation, but it's as pervasive as even AI music and generated content. You get tools like Suno out there that you can go out and dump some information and create a song based off of any genre you want. Now, is that song going to be a top 40 hit? Probably not, but I think in some ways we're taking creativity out of the mix for so many people. Um, how important is it that we keep that creative juice flowing? Because it's like as we create content, AI may make content faster, but arguably it's the human element that really influences it. So how important is it that we kind of hold on to that?
Um, I was recently reading uh, a story about one of the AI founders. I can't remember who it was, but he was talking about the whole Suno thing, and that he made the mistake of saying that musicians hate being in the studio and hate the process of actually making music, and they want to just kind of get to the end. And this goes back to what I was saying before about the whole tech thing. Techie people see the end result. They don't appreciate the process. It's kind of like, how can we get rid of the process and just get the end result quicker? Not appreciating that the process is the purpose. And I say this every day of my life. In terms of every project that I work on, the process is the purpose, because it's what we're actually doing, the human element of actually experiencing what it is that we're creating, the highs and lows of that, the frustrations of that. That's human. That's being human. It's not just I input this and this comes out the other end. You're like, great, who cares? As regards to the Suno thing, specifically to your question, there are quite a few records that are actually AI generated that have been in like the American top 40, and about maybe about a third
Wow.
of music that's currently on Spotify is AI generated, and it has been rumored, so don't
Oh
get
my
sued,
gosh.
that it's actually Spotify that is actually creating this music, so that they're making the streaming numbers and the
No
revenue
kidding.
from that. So, in terms of tech people being sympathetic to musicians and the actual art of songwriting or anything like that, it's an algorithm, it's an end result. And for me, like for example, I'll use AI every day in a lot of things, and to do the things that I don't do or I don't want to do. But there's situations where there's actually somebody I know who can do this, or we have a budget for that. And sometimes it's, well, no, we can do the AI thing, that's fine. But if we have a budget to do it in person, then great, let's do that. We'll, for example, a video or whatever, we'll shoot something for real. But from a music point of view, I'm a musician before I'm anything else. I'm a composer and songwriter and multi instrumentalist. I didn't spend years and years and years learning how to do all of these skills and acquiring that ability to just type in a couple of things and get something to just create something that's an amalgam of just everything that's already there. It's not going to be truly original. And that's not to say that what you're hearing from these um,
Yeah.
AI generators like Suno, it's some of these things are absolutely incredible, and they can be useful in terms of maybe
Uh,
contextualizing
absolutely.
things and just kind of, oh, this is a good idea, or generating some ideas. But I mean, there was a case story recently where Kenny Chesney, the country star, was he heard this. I think it was like a banjo part or something on a record. And he was like, I want it to sound exactly like that. And it turned out that that was actually an AI generated part that he heard. And that was like an authentic country guy who, you're fooling people. It's incredibly difficult to tell when something is AI within context. And there's other times it's really, really obvious. But if you're following the rules
Yeah.
of songwriting and in genre form like country music and pop music, that can sound very much like the way those genres sound, because there's very specific rules to that anyway. So it's harder to replicate things that are more free form like that, like classical or whatever. But anyway, I think it comes down to um,
Yeah, I love that though.
actually enjoying the process. And it's human emotions that have informed that.
I
It's like,
remember watching
you know,
Charlie Puth. Yeah, Charlie Puth one time. I was saw him being interviewed, and he was talking about he had this hit song, and there was a beat at the front that he said, yeah, he goes, that's the sound of a like a crossing, like a the signs at a crossing on a street. And he says, "What do you mean?" And he actually pulled it up and he played it in real time, and you could hear the
mhm,
tick tock, like as people are crossing the street, and they took that tone and they sped it up. So I mean, stuff like that in production, it's like you do creative things like that. So I could see AI
absolutely.
being such a
I
valuable
mean,
tool, but creativity is a muscle, and I think it's a muscle everyone needs
yeah,
to exercise. As we close this out, I want to bring up something where creativity really is you showcase, and you're a musician at heart. You're an entrepreneur by nature. You're a incredible branding person, but your creativity is something that always inspires me. You have a really cool project you're working on that is all about creativity called Madison and Bounce. You want to talk a little bit about that as we close this out?
sure. When I was first working with this AI company last year, I was like, I really want to see if I can find a way to incorporate AI into what it is I'm actually doing in a way that works for me. And I had this idea about 18 months ago to shoot this Madison and Bounce thing, which is kind of like a buddy cop kind of thing. And it's a private detective and his dog, Mike Madison and Bounce, the dog. And I was going to shoot it for real, like live action. And it was going to be me and a stuffed toy. And I was going to like pull it along with a piece of string. Just, it was going to be deliberately ridiculous. And then I was like, this would just take up far too much of my time. Um, and then AI got to the level that it has, in recent months, that I was like, oh, hold on. I wonder if I tried to kind of create a version of this in a AI form, would that actually work? So I did a kind of some test shots for it, and I researched how people were going about doing that, um, and really for about the past month, I've kind of been developing this show very much based around the idea of, okay, let's create this for TikTok, specifically for TikTok. And each detective case is going to be 5 episodes. They're going to be about minute and 10 seconds long. And each case is going to be 5 episodes. So I'm about 3 episodes in. It's an awful lot of work, but I'm hardly sleeping, but I am loving what I'm doing. And it's world building. You're creating the place where these guys live and all these different characters. And so for me, I love to do everything myself if I can. I'm not arguing with anybody. So I create the theme tune. I got my wife to sing on it, and doing the music and the sound design for for all of it, and I do the voice of Mike Madison as well, and it's kind of bringing all those elements together. It's everything that I've ever learned how to do, and putting it all together. Um, so with a bit of luck, it actually, it would be nice if it took off whenever it's good to go. I'm not going to put it out until I've got the entire first season done, which is going to be somewhere between 20 and 30 episodes. I'm not entirely sure. Um, and once that's good to go, then okay, we'll put it out there. But it's an awful lot of fun, and I think that's a way to everybody who I've shown it to, and people who are creatives, graphic designers, and people who you might expect to be kind of anti AI in certain ways. Every single one of them has said to me, "This is a really, really creative way of using AI, and it's not just like AI slop." I hate that expression, but we're creating something that's fun and engaging, and it's really it's a creative tool that I'm using to kind of help tell these stories in a way that I never would have been able to do. It would have cost a fortune to kind of do these things before, but technology is undefeated, and if I'd rather be working with technology in a way that can help me tell the stories that I want to tell, rather than be out of a job bitching about that damn AI, so I'm really excited about it. And I will obviously be
I
keeping you
love it.
informed about what's happening.
Yeah, I can't wait to follow along, and I know you are the master at building the journey and building the character relationships. So I'm sure that it'll be fun to watch it progress. I speaking of that, obviously enabling buying is about the selling process, and really it's about the creating a buying journey, a buying process. But uh, since we're talking about creative and what you're creating, I just saw that the first full feature video movie was created using AI, and I think it was a $2,000 budget. Maybe it was $20,000 budget. It doesn't
Mm,
really matter what it was,
it
but the
wasn't a lot.
quality of the clips I've seen, it's really amazing. And it's like at some point, are we going to even need actors? That's the question. It's like there's so
I
many
think,
things coming in the creative space, but it'll
yeah.
be interesting to see that journey. So go ahead.
I was just going to say I don't think it has to be an either or. I think there's always going to be actors, there's always going to be musicians, and there's always going to be the real world experience. People going to concerts and people going to see plays and experience things for real. And AI can't do that.
Yeah.
So I think there's a place for everything, and it doesn't just because it exists here doesn't mean it doesn't have to exist at all.
Well, as we close this out, I have one final question, and I want to be respectful of your time and just thank you for coming today. But as we look at the world where we are right now, more and more becoming automated every day, use of AI. What do you think people will value most over the next 5 years? Have you thought about that from the business side of things? What do you think people value the most in 5 years?
I think everything goes in cycles, and I think in-person experiences are really going to go through the roof. I mean, and they already have. Whenever COVID hit, and everybody initially was like, "Yay, I don't have to go to work. I can, just stay at home." And but then people were like, "Okay, I actually want to go and actually engage with people." And then you look at the mental health statistics, and how people, Gen Z in particular, they're not engaging with people in the real world necessarily, according to certain studies, and they're very closed off from that human experience. But you're finding that there's part of that generation that are getting rid of their smartphones, going to flip phones, so they're not that connected, and going out and just meeting their friends and being part of the world. And I think there's going to come a point when AI, social media, all these things, it's just reached saturation point, and people want to go out and actually engage with other people and actually have some kind of physical contact and experience things for real. I mean, my friends who work in the events space, it's all about experiential events, and I think this is something we spoke about before as well. The difference between selling in the high street and selling, e-commerce, selling online, is that experience in the high street, or bricks and mortar stores, has to be an experience. It has to be a discernible, different experience to what the buyer's experience is online. And it's creating that distinction rather than just replicating exactly the same thing. So I think in 5 years' time, I have no idea, but I would say, just thinking of it from a cyclical point of view, and you're already seeing bits of that, there's going to be people who are just wanting to actually get out there and experience things for real.
Yeah. Greg Friel, thanks for being on. Can you tell people how they can connect with you and follow you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, of course, Greg Friel there, and just find a dodgy looking guy wearing shades. You'll see me there, and you can check out my website, gregfriel.com, and that's to do with everything that I do. And the studio website is freelancemedia.co.uk.
Yeah, and we'll put all that in the show notes. Thank you again, Greg Friel, for being on the Enabling Buying podcast. Hope you have an amazing day.
Thanks very much, Paul. Great to talk to you.